uh, our third quarter Brokers Forum here in October, and welcoming our co-counsels, Attorney Jonathan Peck and Attorney Andrew Cellemme. And thank you guys for everything that you do for ECAR. And on today's agenda, we've got on the screen, Susie will start with a little bit of housekeeping.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Catherine asked me to just mention a couple of things. As you know, the dues invoices are out. You can go onto the website and click on to My ECAR, and that's your Ramco portal to see it. There is also a pay plan. It's right on that first screen when you go to My ECAR. You will need your NERDS ID and your as your username, and there's a link to click to get your NERDS ID if you don't know it, and then your password is your last name with the first letter capitalized. And so the payment plan is available right on that first page. Any one of your agents who is interested in going on the payment plan does need to get that signed by you as the broker to go on that payment plan. We have revised the ECAR membership application and update form. It is on the website. And some people are still emailing to Mary Lee or Marisol. So just a reminder that Catherine is the Member Services Director with any questions about membership. And I'm working on a comparison of dues. Some people have asked for it. Has anyone here actually looked at the dues bill yet? It's itemized so you can see the breakdown of the local dues, the state dues, and the NAR dues, and the NAR image campaign, the advertising, their brand advertising. And then there is also an optional Gates Scholarship and Political Action Fund donation in there. So you can, as you go through, you can edit that and remove it if you don't want to make those. Otherwise, the total with those optional investments is I believe it's $885. So any questions about that, you can direct them to Catherine or me. And if I think of anything else, I'll let you know as we go.
Super, thank you, Susie.
Yeah.
And yeah, we can answer any questions on that. That comparison will be helpful. Jumping right into it though, because we've got two very busy attorneys here to help us all out with the topics of multiple bids, appraisals, escalation clauses, and we're also going to open it up broker forum. It's your time to ask questions. So we'll start off with the hot topic of the day in multiple offers. And maybe we should have done this first thing in the beginning of the year, because we have been seeing a lot of those. Who wants to start, John or Andrew? It looks like John's got his mic unmuted. So, John, what do you think about what we're dealing with?
Well, I mean, obviously, I don't necessarily get involved, or me and Andrew don't necessarily get involved in the multiple offer situation. I mean, unless we get the phone call, usually from one of our agents. But I guess I didn't know that I was supposed to prepare a presentation on multiple offers. I don't think Andrew knew that either. But,
no.
But I mean, we'd be happy to respond to any questions or thoughts, things that we need to address. I mean, obviously, you guys have an obligation to present all offers. And, you know, the multiple offer situation presents the best opportunity for everybody to use their negotiation skills to the best of their abilities. In terms of ethics, you know, Susie's probably better suited to talk about the ethics involved in multiple offers. But as far as the contract aspects of it, you know, I'd be happy to address any issues that people are having.
And actually, Kathy Newland, I'm muting you just because something's happening on a mic pickup on background noise. So I just got Kathy muted so that it stays on speaker view. I don't know why it's not coming back to that right now for me. But yeah, John, the interesting thing is I just shared in chat the NAR guidance, and it's a pretty good one on multiple offers. They've got a guide, and one of the things in researching for the topic that we have today that was interesting was some we as agents have to deal with this up front, and sometimes buyers are thinking that their offer is something that's confidential once it's presented to the other side. And it was interesting to learn that sellers can actually, I've never seen it here locally, but I guess sellers can actually shop offers, meaning
Absolutely.
that they can disclose, hey, I just received an offer. Here's the price and terms. Can you beat it? I mean, I'm being blatant with putting it out there like that, but
No, but that's entirely true. And I actually had a situation last week where I got a phone call. I can't even remember who it was from. And I don't know if it was a deal that I was involved in or it was just a general question. But there's no question. And that's what I said, people choose to use their negotiation skills in different ways. So once the offer's been made to a buyer and the buyer's agent, there is no obligation that the buyer's agent has or that the buyer has in terms of not disclosing that offer to other people and using that offer to get better offers. Oftentimes, I think people just go to the standard, okay, now I want your highest and best. But that doesn't have to be the end. The end can be, okay, highest and best. Oh, now we've got another one. And do you want to go higher than that and play one off the other until you're done?
Right. And what happens on this, it's interesting because I personally have seen it where we get into a situation, we've got multiple offers, then as the listing agent, we're really having to break this stuff down to identify, it's not all about price. It's the pre-qualification or pre-approval status. It's the price, the loan to value. How about appraisal? Appraisal's a big one. I have seen, and I've been asked more so in the center of the state, and it was the first time I heard it was in Middletown, was that we are seeing a request from a listing agent, oh, with your offer, tell us how much above appraisal you're willing to pay. And the first time I heard that, I was like, what do you, and this was about 4 months ago. And apparently in Glastonbury, if you're not going and saying you'll pay, 30, 40,000 above above appraised value, you could be left high and dry. And so, that's an appraisal issue that we all know we have to face. But it's on the first point, Tim Bray, you've got an auction model, and that's public. You can see other bids in auction setups, correct?
Yeah, depending on how that particular auction is set up with your seller. You could make it so that it's not, that people are not privy to all the others, but most of the time they are.
Right. So one takeaway that we've got right now this morning is, I hope everybody on the call and everybody re-listening to this is, it is not a violation of the code of ethics to share what that other offer is. Is it a smart thing to do? I don't know. I'd leave it up to you to decide as an individual agent. Talk to your broker. If you're, your broker, definitely will have say in what their policies and procedures are. Brian, how about yourself? What do you think about that?
I think that's fair game. I think it goes right back to the, agents are finally getting it that, what the seller does is confidential to the seller and to the agent that represents them. And they make all the decisions on how to move forward based on a conversation with that agent. We've shopped offers for years because that's the best thing to do for our client. It doesn't always create good relations with other agents, but we try to be as candid as we can about it and just, keep everybody on the up and up. When even answering a simple question like, are there offers on the table? People still don't understand that that's confidential information too. That's a confidential question. So It's been pretty aggressive. I mean, we've had to start holding checks, actually. We've had to start holding fully executed contracts at discussion and direction of our clients until the agent shows up at our door or we receive the deposit, because we've had people cancel these on the draw and then, and then not show up with the contract, and we've already made a status change, etc. So we don't do that. Typically, you need to deliver your deposit to us.
Yeah. So actually, Brian, you hit a bunch of different points that are really good. And I want this to be actionable information and takeaway information for best practices for us here in Connecticut. You just said something about the disclosure. You felt that you said something about the disclosure. Are there other offers?
Right.
The fact of the matter is, right there, we're starting to get into something that it can be an ethics violation, because you cannot go and say, oh yeah, there's other offers. If there isn't another offer, John or Andrew, we've got a problem at that point, don't we? If an agent goes and says, oh yeah, we've got other offers, and they're not being truthful, what about that?
Well, that's absolutely. I mean, that's against the code of ethics. You have an obligation to be honest. So Susie had highlighted a section of that article that you posted that says that the code of ethics obligates realtors to be honest with all parties, to present offers and counters offers quickly and objectively, and to cooperate with other brokers. Cooperation involves sharing of relevant information. Now, the relevant information isn't necessarily the content of an offer. That isn't necessarily what they're talking about here. If you choose to disclose information that's in other offers, or if you choose to disclose the fact that there are other offers, your obligation is to disclose truthfully. You can't just make up facts. Now, realistically, you'd need to be able to enforce that by having information that would contradict it. But,
John,
you certainly don't want to encourage agents to be out there just inventing information.
But the question, if a buyer's agent asks a listing agent, is there another offer? That answer has to be provided, correct?
I don't believe that it has to be provided.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, without the client's consent, I don't think that it should be provided. I think that all of this boils down to your relationship with your client and the information that your client has authorized you to disclose to other people. And I think that it's important that as an agent that you have the foresight, the business acumen to know that you need to have that conversation and when to use the information that you're now able to use given the permission that you've been granted by your client. In other words, your client says, yes, I want everybody to know that we're crazy, that we've had offers, several offers. I want them to know what the highest offer is. If you believe that that's in my best interest in negotiating the deal, then once you have that okay, then you can disclose all of that. But just because you're asked a question regarding the negotiation of a sale doesn't mean that you have an obligation to disclose to the other side what that information is.
Yeah, and so what you just alluded to is what's called lawful instructions, correct?
Correct.
Lawful instructions from our clients. So, and I now think of it from a standpoint of, I remember a situation recently where the agent said, per the instructions of my client, we are not disclosing if there are any other offers. And it was interesting because it was also the first time I had heard that. So in the last 6 months, I've heard of how much you're willing to pay above appraised value. And I had never heard of before someone saying, well, my seller does not want me to disclose the presence, the existence of any other offers.
And Greg, one point on that is I think this isn't something that you should wait until you're in the situation to ask your seller what they want to do in that situation. So this is probably something that at your listing appointments, when you're getting ready to put it on the market, you should be, especially in this market, you should be prepared to have that answer and that discussion with the seller so you don't find yourself in a jam. Because a lot of times I think people get into situations because they wait till the issue arises to start dealing with it. And at that point, the tensions in the relationship may not be the same as they were at the beginning of the representation. So I think that's the good time to have that discussion, just like you're talking about dual agency and everything else that may come up, is to have that discussion at the onset and not wait until the issue is presented.
Perhaps that's something to be put into the listing contract, and we're working on that right now, the Farms Committee. As long as that's a universal question and answer for every transaction with a seller, then that might be something for the listing agreement.
I think that's an interesting point, Susie, because of the fact that now we have this instruction. It's not verbal. It's not buried in a text thread. It's in writing, which is always the best course.
Excuse me. The fact that you have the authority to do it doesn't mean that you have to. So I think that if it's going to be in the listing agreement, then it's got to be phrased in a way that it gives the realtor the discretion to disclose that information when appropriate or not, but give the permission so that if it's appropriate, the question can be answered.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, so circling back to Brian. So Brian, you had a second point before I interrupted you, and that was that the point was that you were not necessarily, you made the point clearly that you're not obligated to your lawful instructions, I guess, was the best example. Was there any other thoughts that you wanted to add to this?
Oh, first thought is just in response to adding anything more to the listing agreement. I would be definitely against that. There's way too many people that just don't understand the basic mechanics of a contract, never mind bringing in anything about potential negotiations, a code of ethics. But it's a simple conversation that people answer the question all the time, and not to be redundant, or but yeah, it's confidential information. And if you called me, Greg, and said, hey, do you have any offers? I'd say, hey, you know what? Good question. Let me check in with my seller and see if they want that information disclosed. Mm. That's what you're supposed to be doing, the way that I understand it. And it's at their direction with me as their agent in the conversation about the ups and the downs of that. I mean, we've got a document that we created many years ago that says, here's the upside of doing that, and here's the downside. You could lose, offers by disclosing that there are other offers, or you could get people to pay more money. So, or come in with their highest and best. So that's a question. The other thing that I said, the other point was just, we had a couple of agents, not many. It seemed like there was a little string of a week or two where inventory was coming on slowly, but then multiple offers were coming in. We had people not delivering deposit checks, so we wouldn't return the contract of a fully executed agreement back to the agent representing the buyer until they actually delivered the check to us. Once we had the check, then we delivered the contract back to them, and it was considered fully executed.
Yeah, thank you for bringing.
We had a lot of massive pushback on that. It was a big exchange on one of the forums, and hey, you can't do this, and that's illegal, and it says this and it says that, and it's not. I mean, it was a good lesson for a few people that we were dealing with. That, I mean, I get it. Hey, that's why we ask for a bigger deposit now. $1,000 on a contract with us, that doesn't work. I mean, even if it's USDA, give me all your money as much as you can, because I don't want you switching to another good listing that comes up, that happens to come up, and because you were buying something that was, you had to buy because of the lack of inventory.
Well, and let's not lose that thought that you just made about the deposit.
No, that's good.
And because that point right there, let's circle back to that for a second, because we have, the offers made. When that offer is made, and then your buyer makes a selection and they want to sign that deal. What's interesting about that is all of us on the call and re-listening to this understand that we've got a smart MLS rule that says within 48 hours that the status change has to be made. And it's not receipt of deposit, it's this signature, electronic or ink, that triggers that. So your strategy of saying, hey, we'll accept your offer, as soon as we receive the check is a valid one because of the fact that it's now all of a sudden, if the burden is put on the buyer's agent to perform and get your rear end in there with the deposit. Now it's a little bit awkward when you've got out of state, person. Me, whenever I've got a check in transit, I'm, dealing with overnight, providing tracking, providing the photo of it. And I've never had someone say that's not good enough. And I've also never had a check not, delivered and my reputation is on the line. But I know where you're going with that. What do you think, John, or anyone else chime in here?
So I believe it was the last brokers meeting that we had at ECAR, where we had an in-depth conversation about the same issue. And both Andrew and I suggested exactly what's being suggested here. Because the issue isn't, if you get the deposit, obviously you get the deposit, no issue. But if you don't get the deposit and you've already delivered a signed contract, you have a signed contract. And it's impossible to get out of it without another written document that does so, or a decision by a judge, which obviously isn't going to happen in the next reasonable period of time. So it's very important. I mean, we never had this issue. I'll show how long I've been doing this, but we never had this issue when I first got into the business, because obviously checks were delivered with the contract, because contracts were actually delivered. But without that, I think it's a great idea. If you have any concern at all about collection, or if you have multiple opportunities to sign this property up, you should make sure that you tie it up as good as you can do when you are in fact agreeing to a contract, and that includes getting whatever deposit you've agreed to.
Well, and to flip the conversation on its head a little bit, the deposit, there's still contingencies, there's still exit doors built into the typical deal. So that large deposit is not it's not necessarily tangible to the seller unless there's a default. And the thing about it is, when we get into this multiple offer situation, and you've got some backups, the downside of disclosing, hey, we're going to have highest and best. This morning, I changed a listing saying highest and best by Sunday, 6 p.m. Is that a negative? It could be seen as a negative. Will I lose some of the showings that might be scheduled right now? Yes, probably. But you know what? It's probably not a bad thing, because of the fact that those buyers that don't want to get into a multiple bid situation, they're not wasting their time and the agent's time going there. But I want to go to the fact that release has to be signed in order to go and do another deal. And if we have a problem where the buyer's not performing, or they want to just exit the deal, yes, the deposit is there as liquidated damages, but what about the mechanics? John and Andrew, what do you guys think about on the listing side? The issue becomes a buyer's not coming, the buyer, let's just say the buyer in this case, if you weren't doing the best practice that's being laid out right now of holding out, waiting for the deposit to be in hand, if you sign the contract, you change the status, and now you're sitting there waiting for the deposit, how long do you wait? And then what do you do with putting the listing back to active? What kind of comments can you put out there? Hey, this is back active, subject to release. I'd like to hear what people have to say.
John kind of hit on that a little bit earlier, and it was something, John, at that last, it was the first quarterly meeting before COVID at ECAR. This was a topic, and one, it's going to depend on which contract you're using, but for sake of discussion, let's assume we're using our ECAR form, and you get a signed contract but no deposit. Like John said, you have a contract. It's just now you have to go through the mechanisms laid out in that contract to get the deposit. I think, Greg, you're asking, you didn't receive the deposit, so what do you do? Right.
Either that, or I guess the question is, what does a listing broker do when they've got either non-receipt of deposit or the buyer just doesn't seem to be performing, and how do they bring it back to market?
Well, the first part of that, let me just get clarification on an MLS side, because John and I aren't as super exposed to that. But my understanding is you don't have to mark MLS until receipt of deposit and a signed contract, correct?
I'm sorry, I looked at chat right when you said that. Say it again.
No, I don't think you're right.
So
Say it again.
that's why I'm at.
No,
Yeah,
on
I think that what delivered signed contract triggers the change in status in MLS.
yes, 100%.
And
And
my
doesn't matter if you
understanding,
get the deposit or not.
No.
my understanding of MLS is that you cannot change it back to active once you have a signed contract without a release, unless you note that the property is going to be subject to obtaining a release of a prior pending contract.
Right. Yeah, and that's where my head is at, but I'd like to hear what anyone else think. Brian, you say you're in chat. Brian, you want to speak to this. Go ahead.
Right. Well, MLS and working for your client are two completely separate things. And I think there's too many mistakes that agents make because they're trying to work within the guidelines, rules, and regulations of the MLS. I decide when a property is under deposit, and I decide when it should go back onto the market from an MLS perspective. Now, Andrew and Jonathan probably wouldn't agree with some of the mechanics of the legal components of that, but part of the reason of not delivering a contract back is I don't have a contract. There is no contract, regardless of the check receipt. Until the agent has that back, that's not a fully executed contract. And until I have both of those things, I'm not going to change the status in MLS. And then once I change the status in MLS, if there's a problem and the buyer is going to be likely terminating or they're not meeting the terms of the contract, and I'm not disputing what Jonathan says because he's looking at it from a legal perspective, I'm looking at it from a marketing and my best client perspective, I'm going to put that property back on the market as active and start fishing for other offers, and then communicate effectively with the people that are raising their hand and just saying, hey, it's going to be subject to the termination, but bring it in. I'm not going to not have the property on the market during a prime time, of selling, because I'm having difficulties with another contract that eventually almost always will terminate at some point in time.
The only thing I'm saying to you with respect to you doing that is that you agree to market in accordance with MLS rules. And I'm just telling you what I understand MLS rules to be. So you put yourself at risk with the MLS system by doing something that's contrary to their rules and regulations.
Right, but I'm okay, Jonathan, putting myself at risk because I put my client first above the MLS. And I've always objected to MLS, micromanaging, not my activities, but what I deem is the status of the property, not what their rules and regulations necessarily say. So it's a difference of opinion.
Well, that's a subject. That's a topic for a different conversation.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. No sense, belaboring
Well,
that. It's a whole different thing.
I thought your strategy was great until you say, I'm not going to change the status. If the holding back of the contract signature until that deposit's in hand, that makes you in compliance. But if you have the signature, let me see, if you have the...
It was opposite, Greg. It was opposite in that. I'm going to put the property back in active status before I have a fully executed release.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Because it didn't come out that way. It was coming out some...
Yeah, once it's deposit, it's deposit. I get the deposit part. But
well, it's
a fully executed release. If I had challenges getting a deposit check, I'm likely going to have challenges getting a release.
It's once it's signed, though. I have to be clear. It's once it's signed. It has nothing to do with deposit.
Once it's signed and delivery's been made back to the agent, that's the trigger of the acceptance of the
correct.
payment.
It doesn't have to do with the deposit. So I've got Kathy Newland has a question, and I'd also like to have Marilyn and John chime in on this, but Kathy first. Kathy, you had a question?
I think she,
There
I think she was going to.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, so MLS will not let you put a listing back active contingent upon a release. If they see that in the comments, they will do a compliance. So it's not something they'll allow.
Interesting.
So you've had an issue with that before?
Yes.
I have as well.
Interesting.
There you go.
Greg Marie Gandy Winslow had a question.
Well, I mean, I can, the question was, does the seller have to initial a rejected offer? And a seller doesn't have to respond to a rejected offer. There's no contract. So there's no contractual relationship that exists between a buyer and a seller until you have a fully executed contract. So, you know, a buyer submits a contract, the seller tells the agent, I'm not interested. You can just ignore it. I mean, it would be nice if you communicate to the other side, but there's no obligation for the seller to do anything in that circumstance.
Actually, we do have a form, the ECAR form, which is a confirmation of offer submittal, but it's not signed by the seller. It is only signed by the agent on the listing side. So that is a form that's available that you guys created that you can utilize.
Which is different than a rejected offer.
No, but it's similar in the sense that at least it's a validation, you know, it's an affirmation that the offer was presented, and it came from some agents questioning if their offer was even presented. And so that form is available. The thing that John just alluded to that I think is a huge thing and a huge issue, how about a little bit of feedback to the people that don't have their offers accepted? You know, if there's let's say there's a deadline established, you know, 6 o'clock Sunday night, wouldn't it be nice to know if your offer was not accepted? Obviously you'd know if it was accepted because you get it back, but there are some agents that just don't have the courtesy to let you know that another.
And what should happen is that the person submitting the offer should withdraw the offer. Once their time frame has passed, whatever that time frame is, they should indicate to the listing agent that the offer is hereby withdrawn.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually, if you think back to our May of 2019 is our latest PNS. That doesn't, that the section about the offer being able to be withdrawn is all gone in there. One thing that I do when I'm submitting offers is I do indicate what is the time frame for acceptance. And you could debate whether that's a smart thing or a bad thing to do, but you have to realize when you put that offer out there, John just made the point, you got to pull it back. Otherwise the offer's still out there.
And
right?
Greg, that clause you're talking about really didn't effectuate the withdrawal because it said may.
Correct.
And you may withdraw an offer at any point in time, even if you filled out that section. So
correct.
I think that section created more confusion, but John does raise a good point. If you don't receive a response, then you should revoke the offer because God forbid you just sit there and wait, don't hear anything, put an offer into somewhere else, and then all of a sudden you get that offer signed and delivered back to you. So it's not a bad idea to make sure that you do terminate if you don't hear anything back, or to include a clause, but it's got to say shall, not may.
Let me ask you this. During the offer transmittal, the email that's transmitting it, do you think it's reasonable to say something along the lines of this offer is, valid for acceptance through Friday night at 6 p.m. Otherwise, the offer shall be deemed null and void and automatically revoked? Is that reasonable in an email format, or does it need to be in the PNS?
It's probably safe. It's safer to put it in the additional provisions.
Okay.
Greg,
I've
I'd
got
like
to-
to bring up a couple of things if I could. I've received a couple of calls on the topic for today, which is the multiple bids, appraisals, and escalation clauses. One of them we've discussed, when buyers winning bid doesn't appraise, and I think we came up with a solution to put in other conditions to indicate what the buyer is willing to pay above and beyond an appraisal as a potential solution to that. The other two are, the other buyer didn't know that the seller wanted use of a garage for a year, and the buyer that got the winning bid was willing to satisfy that contingency, but the other buyers didn't know anything about it. So what kind of a legal issue is that? The other one is when negotiations go into another round, like we want your highest and best, but then the market's still going up or whatever, it's not enough. They know they can get more, so they go into another one, but not all buyers are aware of that, and they're calling upset about that.
Well, I mean, all of those things are issues that the listing agent, I'm sorry, that the seller should have with their listing agent, right? Unless there was a strategic reason to do either, to conduct business in either of the ways that you described, it seems to me that in both of those circumstances, the listing agent has given up the seller's opportunity to get a better offer, right? By not communicating the information that was necessary in order to get that better offer, right? But it would be the listing agent's obligation to disclose both of those things, assuming they have permission of their client to do so. Certainly seemed like they did with respect to the needing to use the garage for a year, right? I mean,
Is that a potential ethical issue? Okay.
right? I mean,
and just so I'm following you, the seller wanted to retain use, and they told some buyers, but not all.
Correct.
Right. Well, they got to be truthful, right? I mean, we've already kind of covered that.
Well,
Yes.
in this age of multiple bids, things happen rather quickly, and
Right. And
but that's not an excuse for not doing your job.
It's not an excuse for not doing your job, but I think a lot of times people impute bad intent with some just regular old negligence. So sometimes people just are bad at their job. They're not intentionally trying to defraud somebody. Not that that makes a difference to the final outcome, but I think, like you hit the nail on the head, this is a different situation for a lot of people that have never been involved in this, and things are moving quite quickly, which is why we need to do more things like this to get the information out there so people have a better understanding of how to deal with the situation once they're presented.
so is your legal advice to the audience that in a situation, either one of these two things, some weird contingency with the seller or another round of negotiating, that the listing agent be sure to notify all co-broking parties about what's going on in the transaction?
If that's agreed to by their client, yes. I mean, they can't just pick their favorite agents and say, hey, look, I have some inside information from you. If you put this in a contract, my guy's going to accept it. And ignore all the rest of the offers that are out there. I mean, that would be inappropriate.
Can the seller say do that for this one but not the other, or does the seller also have to be? Okay.
Let me circle back to Kathy's point about the MLS not allowing it to be flipped back to active. How about the fact that if you have written request by the by the seller, where they're saying they understand that they have a contract, but they are requesting, it's a lawful instruction. They are requesting the change in status, understanding there may be legal ramifications. Because would the MLS be saying that they don't want to do it because they don't want the listing agent to put the seller in harm's way? That's lawful instructions, wouldn't it be?
Well, yeah, but you can't, MLS, it's not like MLS is some public domain. It's not. It's a private domain, and it's governed by the rules and regulations that exist with respect to it. Now, whether MLS is going to have no jurisdiction over that seller, right? I mean, they can't they can't terminate use. They can't do anything with respect to the seller, but they can with respect to the agent.
Right. Well, with Bonnie, President-elect, brought up a good point. There's another call coming up with Smart MLS, where we're all going to be able to have a town hall meeting and voice our opinions on this topic. I want to go to a point that Molly made in chat, and let's talk about backup offers. What about the other offers that were not accepted? Anyone have thoughts on, backup offers and what are the best practices for trying to be the backup offer? What about the listing side? Does anybody out there, come out and say, hey, you are the backup? What are the thoughts on that? And Molly, feel free to chime in if I didn't get your question exactly the way you want it.
I got to do my test.
Okay.
Nothing on that. No one has any thoughts on that?
No, I know, we're done.
Okay.
5%.
Marilyn, what do you think?
That's all.
Backup offers. I've
Yeah.
asked for my offer to sit on the table as a backup offer, and I've also asked agents, would they like me to keep their offer as a backup?
That was my seller. No, that was my
Oops,
seller.
hang on one second. I'm going to mute Carol. There we go. How about Ann? You get a lot of backup offers.
Sorry, I muted myself. Yeah, no, I do the same thing that Marilyn does. I also think just in general, listening to everything, I probably talk too much, but I'm a good communicator. So I think that a lot of the things that we're talking about right now with being transparent, and I feel like I am constantly going back and forth and communicating. And I start off my relationships with my listing agents a lot of the time by saying, hello, I'm your new third person in your marriage, because we're going to be talking all the time. And I think that for me works well, is just making sure that I'm kind of back and forth all the time with everybody. Again, to just try to make everything fair and make sure we're all on the same page. But
So
yeah,
when-
as far as.
So that's when you're on the buy side, right?
Well, no, I'm talking about mostly on the listing side.
Okay.
As far as being, just again, if to what Marilyn just say, if I've got backup offers, basically I start with to my listers, to my sellers, how do you want to handle this? This is what I think you should do, but it's your decision. Do you want my suggestion? I'll give you my suggestion if you want it, but the decision is yours, ultimately. So as far as backup offers or whatever the situation, a lot of times I ask them how they want me to handle it. And I'm happy to, do whatever they want, obviously within reason, within ethical reasoning.
Yeah.
But yeah.
How about Melissa? Melissa, do you have an office policy on this? How do you guys handle it?
Can you hear me okay, Greg?
We got you loud and clear now.
Okay, thank you. As far as backup offers, we do the same thing, what Marilyn and Ann had said. We don't actually have a policy as to if they, want to stay a backup offer or not. It's up to the client, and we just really leave it up to the agent who's doing the negotiation.
Yeah, and the other thing is that the backup offers go back to John's point. How long do you want to leave it out there?
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say that. Just make sure
because
you remember. Make sure if you leave a backup offer on the table, make sure that you remember that it's on the table. Because if 3 weeks after your client closed on their last property, you sign contract back where the backup offer is now the primary offer, nobody will be happy with that. So just keep an eye on it.
It's kind of leaving your credit card in the restaurant and going to a different restaurant because you weren't happy with the service, So, so on the other part of what we were wanting to talk about, how about the idea of escalation clauses? Are there any legal pitfalls that, because we don't have a board form for that, are there any problems that you Andrew and John are seeing with escalation clause from a legal standpoint?
And what are you seeing? How are people putting it in? Is it going into the offer?
I received an escalation clause the other day that was very well written. I wanted to ask the agent where they got it from because it covered every detail. I won't be able to find it right now, but I'll be happy to share it.
I'll give you a tech tip on that. If you do really like it, you can put it into Google Docs and have it OCR, extract all the wording and then run it by your favorite attorney and make it your own.
Or you can stop by my office and do it for me.
Well, I know it's not mine because I haven't sent you any. You've never seen mine.
Is it commonplace now?
I do it a lot.
Yeah.
Andrew and I were talking about this just either earlier today or yesterday, I can't remember. But, in the entire time that I've been doing this, I don't think that I've ever seen it get to the end contract that I've looked at. I don't know. I've been asked to comment on escalation clauses in a couple of specific circumstances, 2 or 3, but I haven't drafted one, and I've never seen how it played out in real life.
Does CAR have one? I remember seeing one at the very beginning of the shutdown when things got busy, and it's the only one I have ever seen. And I don't remember if it was from one of the corporate offices or if it was CAR's. But again, like John just said, it's not something that I've been presented with a great deal of over the last 6-9 months. And we're really not exposed to that part of the process of getting to closing. We're more than happy to review documents. But I did review one, and I want to say it was CAR's, but it was back in March or April. I can't remember.
Well, I'm gonna toss out the fact that the escalation clause, it's a very romantic idea for a seller and the listing agent. But in reality, let's just throw out create a real quick example of how bad they can go. It becomes a bad idea sometimes. Let's say we've just got a VA buyer coming in and says, hey, they want 100% financing, and they're buying it for X dollars, and they'll go, so much above, let's say $1,000 over the next highest bona fide bidder or offer. And you do the math and you say, okay, and this person says, and I'll use a real life example, $215 purchase price. Escalation clause built and structured to $250 off of $215. That person that had that escalation clause actually did close. They did get the deal, but they had a ton of cash going into the deal. So the appraisal side didn't have any impact on it. They were still going to do the deal. If you have a person that's really dependent upon all this financing, the sweetness of this deal can blow up in 3-4 weeks when you finally get that appraisal, and now you got to go back to market because the deal blows up because it can't be sustained by someone willing to pay above, that not having the means and pay above an appraised value.
Well, I even think you could go above appraisal if it's a VA.
You can't. You're puffed. But that number sometimes, I'm just saying, I want to put it out there that anyone that's on the receiving end of an escalation clause, and if you haven't dealt with these, and if it's no different than, you have to have dexterity with this, and if you're not familiar with it, the pitfall is don't just look at the math, don't look at the net, price to the seller and think that is the silver bullet, because if it has financing of 100%, this is the clearest example I can make, is that if it's got 100% financing and escalation clause to the moon, well, it's no good when the appraisal doesn't come in. They're never going to get it. So you might be better off with it's like the cash buyer that comes in way below the person that's dependent on the financing. It's that type of contrast. It's black and white. Okay.
I wrote can I add something? I wrote an
Yes.
escalation clause, and a good buyer, conventional, not VA, and I forget, like about 20% down. And there were, I think, at least 7 offers. And our escalation clause went up, I forget. It was up by 1,000 to about 25,000 over the ask price or something like that. But when it finally closed, it took a long time. I looked at the price and it was below what our escalation would have gone to. So I called the agent and I said, hey, what the hell? Did you see our escalation clause? And she's like, I don't know what happened. I gave it to the sellers, all the offers. And I said, did you make sure they knew I had an escalation? She said, yes. But she said, I let it up to them to pick, and they picked a VA buyer.
Well, flip that around though. Actually, the point that you just,
it's not always the money.
It's not always the money. It's price and terms. And there's nothing that stops that's really illustrating my point. There's nothing that stops a seller from accepting a lower price.
Right.
Okay.
Hey, Greg, I just wanted to interrupt and let you know, I had an offer, 10 offers on one property, 3 escalation clauses playing against each other. It was quite interesting. But one of the escalation clauses that most of them were written in under additional provisions, just written out by the agents. However, I did receive one that was done by an addendum made from William Ravis, and I will say it was very well written.
Well, Suzanne just posted in the comments, their escalation clause has the option of must appraise or not. So the buyer has to know this. Do you want to expand on that, Suzanne?
Sure. I mean, basically, the buyer has to make a decision that it's got to appraise if they're getting a specific loan, and it has to appraise to match the escalation. They need to know that. And some, you have a yes or a no. So it states that in our clause.
Ours does as well.
I just sent the escalation clause that I was speaking of to John and Andrew.
Yeah, and I'm going to definitely speak to what Susie just said. Trying to squeeze it into additional provisions with the other additional provisions that we'd already have, never going to work. My escalation clause is 1.25 pages. You know, there's a lot that goes into that.
Do you make it addendum?
It's absolutely an addendum. So the addendum is referenced in additional provisions, and it's communicated, you know, clearly when the offer is conveyed that there is an escalation clause, and where would it go to? If you just stick it in there, I have to say that if you just send an offer, I don't know, maybe I've got a lot of hyperlinks in my email signatures or something, but some of my emails end up Marilyn. I sent a Marilyn an offer and it ended up in her spam folder. So I'm just a warning to anybody, don't just hit send on the email and go off to do something else. It's your obligation to make sure it's received. And yeah, escalation clause is something that if you've got it in there, explain it to the listing agent. Don't assume that they really understand everything, that all the work that you just put into putting this deal together.
Yeah.
And there's
Molly
a point.
made a comment. Sometimes escalation turns sellers off. Do you want to expand on that, Molly?
Yeah.
I'd had a couple sellers that they saw escalation and they're not necessarily impressed with how high they can go, but they you know, like a certain buyer for whatever terms they're at. And especially in like the under 200,000 price points, you know, not all those buyers can really afford cash to make up for appraisal. So it's not like they can, you know, come up with cash to, if they are going way over, and they're more taking into consideration like how much is this actually going to appraise for, and what's the most, I guess, reasonable offer that can appraise without it going higher, because the higher number doesn't matter if it can't appraise and no one can bring extra money.
Yeah, and actually to your point, Molly, that the part about, you know, sometimes it can turn people off. I have seen sellers, you know, and it's worth maybe having a conversation with the listing agent, you know, how do they feel about escalation clauses before you even make the offer? Because I have heard, and I'll come up with a word that makes it really easy to understand. Some sellers think it's a sleazy offer because you're saying, hey, you know, you're being asked to put your highest and best or put your best foot forward, but then you're putting the best foot forward, but then saying, I'll one up the next person, and they don't like it. So it can backfire on you. Absolutely can backfire on you.
I have one point to add. I guess, you know, one of the most questions we get asked is if you're on the listing side and you're going to use an escalation clause, to what degree do you provide documentation on the offer you have?
Well, that's interesting. That's what I was gonna say. Most escalation clauses that I've seen, including the one that Marilyn just sent, requires that the offer be disclosed, the full offer be disclosed to the person who's got the escalation clause that they're presenting. And that you need to be very careful, make sure that your clients are aware that that's required. It is not required unless it's required by the offer. In other words, you have no obligation to disclose the complete other offer unless the escalation clause that you're reviewing requires it. And if it requires it, then it has to be done. It's a condition of the offer that's being made. So you got to balance those things, because the guy or gal who gave the contract with the escalation clause might feel like they have some better terms. Maybe it's the financing, maybe it's the amount down, you know, whatever it is. So you need to make sure that if you're going to use and you're going to accept escalation clauses, then you better have the sophistication in order to be able to deal with them. And if you don't feel comfortable, and if your agents don't feel comfortable, you need to make sure that they come to you or they go to the attorney who's representing the seller so that they can have that conversation. You know, when I teach contracts to new agents, one of the things that I tell them all the time, and I don't think it can be restated enough, is that having the great thing about being you guys in the transaction is that you have attorneys, home inspectors, lenders, all of these professionals who you can basically blame for any of the issues associated with their particular niche. So there's really no reason why I'm not saying that you guys in particular, because you guys are the sophisticated group, but when you're talking to your agents, if they don't want to come to you with all of these conversations, make sure they go to the other professional. So in this case, if they're at all concerned with their ability to handle this properly, send them right on to the attorney representing the seller and let the attorney have the conversation with the seller, so that now the agent is off the hook. You know, they're not going to make a mistake, because even if they did, it's going to be superseded by the advice that they get from the attorney.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is, just make sure that your agents understand that this is not a simple thing. Mm-hmm. And if there's any concern about the use of it, to get advice, whether it's from you guys, the brokers, or from the listing agent.
And John, one more thing on that too. And one more thing on that is and I say this all the time when I teach, is don't be afraid to say, I don't know, but I'll find out. I think a lot of people are getting themselves in situations because they want to sound smart, or they sound like they know what they're talking about to give immediate answers, but use the professionals that are available to you so that you can get the right decision. I think people want professional representation. So saying, I don't know, I'll find out, I'll get right back to you, is definitely the way to go in the situation.
Right, I agree. And the hardest thing with that is that people don't know what they don't know. And so when we have these kinds of conversations to educate your agents, here is an issue that you don't know. Now you know that you don't know. Get advice from people who do.
And
Well,
I think that's one of the main points, because ECAR or CAR does not have this form. Guidance is only coming from the brokerages in regards to this. So even when it comes to being able to disclose offers, you get a lot of agents that don't even understand that you can disclose offers. So then when you get to the point of using an escalation clause and needing to provide documentation, I mean, we've seen pictures of the first page that don't include conditions with names whited out. I mean, you're getting such a host of things and ideas in of what they're going to disclose because there's not a lot of guidance on it.
Well, the one thing that that I think, in my opinion, I think that a good escalation clause would have the obligation to disclose. But here's an interesting one.
Almost all of them do. The only time I haven't seen them is when they're written in additional provisions. And usually when they're written in additional provisions, it's because the office hasn't educated the agents on how to use one effectively.
Right. Well, the thing about that is, how's this sound? We have an escalation clause, and the person with the escalation clause has a Hubbard. Wait a second. If you're looking, and if you're like, if the additional provisions, if you only got page 1 and you don't see that, well, wait a second, this is contingent upon them selling their house. That's not a bona fide offer where they're ready, willing, and able. We've got a poll up. Susie just put up. I'd like to have everybody take the poll. Oh, it already ran. Hold it. End poll. No. Let's see. Susie, how come I can't vote on that?
I don't know.
I can't vote. All I can do is end the poll. But
can everyone take this poll?
I was able to take it.
All right.
Yeah. I guess I can't as an administrator or whatever. But
I just think this is something that's going to continue to come up, and there probably should be, more. I mean, different agencies will still use their different forms, and that's okay. But I think for the smaller groups that do not have a form, it'd be nice for them to be able to use a form.
All right, we'll add that to the forms committee list. And if you guys have any clauses that are well written or want to send them to me, please do.
Yeah, so I just hit share results. We got 11-1, 92% want John and Andrew to draft a draft.
There's a forms committee, Greg. There's a forms committee for this.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and there's counsel on. There's an attorney on the forms committee.
So I have a question about that. Taking the withdrawal date and putting it in the contract. I thought we took the whole date.
It's out.
Expiration of the offer out.
It was never an expiration of offer, but yeah, it's been out since May of 2019. Right.
Yeah, and
the way it was drafted, Bonnie, was not appropriate. It was language that was ineffective on the one hand and legally insufficient on the other.
So
and caused a great deal of confusion.
Why are we going to add a withdrawal date in the provisions?
No, we didn't. We never said that.
We're talking about an escalation clause.
No.
No. We talked earlier about when you leave up an offer out there and you don't withdraw it, then you run a risk, and you do. So it's just important that if you throw an offer out there and because you never heard back from an agent that it had been rejected, or in the case of a multiple offer, if you've left your offer out there as a backup offer, it's important that you communicate the fact that that offer either terminates on its own, and it shall terminate on its own, or once your client's time frame has expired for wanting to leave it open, that you withdraw it.
Yeah, the old language would not have been sufficient to accomplish that.
Because it had the word may. So
correct.
Really summing it up is, before you go buy something else, make sure your old offer is withdrawn.
Right.
You have to, as a buyer's agent that put the offer out there, you have to withdraw it. Communicate
and how
that.
do what's good enough to withdraw? Just an email, or does the buyers have to sign it?
I mean, an email from an agent of the buyer would be fine to terminate an offer.
Okay.
Yep. And don't forget, keep your emails for 7 years.
7 years from when? 7 years from when, Greg?
7 years from
the conclusion of the deal.
From the later of the closing, the termination of the representation, or the release of the money in your escrow account. So if you have escrow money sitting in your account from a deal that dead 10 years ago, your 7 years hasn't even started to run yet. It's
So
the later of those three things.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
So you guys weren't paying attention in the continuing ed course about 3 cycles ago.
All right, are we just about ready to wrap it up?
Yeah, I'd like to just open it up to any other questions because we hit the major topics that we wanted to address. I'd like to open it up to any questions.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Would it make sense on the conversation that we were just having about contracts that offers that are not chosen and then are, live without, ending them? Would it make sense, do the attorneys think, to put, if you're in a multiple offer situation, to put in the, additional conditions there, provisions, that if this offer, something like if this offer is not accepted in this multiple offer situation, then it is null and void or whatever, if that was pleasing to the buyer?
You may want to include a date by which of when it's going to be revoked, because
if your client wants that.
Yeah, if your client wants it revoked, then it should. I would be careful tying it to when this multiple offer situation terminates, because that's kind of a nebulous phrase. I don't. That may be defined a couple of different ways. So you could definitely include a date certain, if not accepted by, this offer shall be revoked.
And just, another thing that I tell new agents when I'm doing the contract is that paragraph, whenever you or your agents are going to write in that paragraph, it can never hurt to run it by the attorney who's representing the client. Even if you have to put a clause in there that the contract is subject to review by buyer or seller's counsel within 48 hours of execution or something like that. I mean, at least gives you the opportunity to get your contract out there, but then on the other hand, have it reviewed to change that type of stuff.
I just have one quick question going back to the backup offers. And I guess I tend to do a lot less of them. When a lot of the agents were referring to backup offers, are you truly executing both sides as a backup, or are you just holding this as a backup offer? Like
I hope they're not signing both sides.
That's what I'm wondering. So you're not signing, you're just holding as a backup.
Just holding.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Don't sign 2 contracts. That's never.
Yeah, any other questions? Well, I'd like to point out in chat, there is the Smart MLS town hall meeting coming up, and we all see it pop up when we jump into Smart MLS and Matrix. I would encourage everybody to get on there. We're going to see Kathy Ellison and Mike Barbaro, who's, I believe, president of the Smart MLS at this point. So we can, any and all questions should be directed to them that are MLS related. And think of your most challenging ones, and let's have an open dialogue with them on that.
Yeah, send it in writing to them.
And don't forget about tomorrow's Get Real with ECAR and CTR President Joanne Breen and CEO Cindy Butts. They will not, I will not be recording at their request. So if you're not on that call, you will miss that conversation.
I got a question about the backup offers before we get off.
Okay.
So if let's say you have 7 multiple offers in this multiple bid, and you're going to do backup offers, is there a legal way to put them? Do you have to put them in order of date received, or is it up to the seller what order of backup they're going to go to?
The seller doesn't have to accept any offer, and they can reject all offers, or they can, accept the 7th offer and reject the 3rd. There's no.
But if you're going to put them, you're going to have more than one backup offer. Is there any guidance on that?
No.
Okay.
It's strictly you know, I'm looking at this 4 sheets of paper versus this 4 sheets of paper. I'm going to put this one first because I like the way the ink is printed. You know, it's irrelevant. Until you have a signed contract, you have no deal. So however you view those is your choice.
Committee considered making up a backup offer form, but it was too complicated and not worth pursuing.
And the other thing is that new listing comes out and that person that was the backup is gone because they went and bought something else. So, you know, there's not a lot of, you know, yeah, there's not a lot.
Holding on to a backup offer is nothing. It's not legally significant to anything. It doesn't give anybody any more or less rights than they have when they have, other than the fact that their name is in front of the seller if things blow up on the first.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. I had a seller the other day who's happens to be a realtor from North Carolina, who's one of those really pain in the butt sellers. But anyway, because she knows it all. Is there a form for responding to the buyer's request for remedies? I mean, I know there isn't, but have we ever thought about that?
There is.
We have a form.
There is a form.
We have a remedy request form, but we do not have a seller's response to the remedy request form.
But it would be the same form with different language on it.
Exactly, I know that, yeah.
Okay. And then ultimately, and I tell, again, these are things that I try to tell to new agents. Ultimately, it's important that a clean form agreed with all agreed terms be what's executed, because until there's a fully executed form that has all the agreements of both parties, you have nothing, right? So I mean, this is the form, and if your client doesn't like it, the way it's presented, take a new one, create it the way he likes it or she likes it, and present it that way.
That's
one other thing on this form is a lot of times we put all the deficient inspection results on here, and then it says agree to a credit of $5,000, and you all sign it and send it to the lender.
Right. Don't want to do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Do an addendum that says whatever the end result, if it is a credit, that's clean, that just references a closing cost credit of $5,000.
Right.
I have one of those right now, and they're going to give us stuff like lawnmowers and all that, and the seller's agent's drawn up that as an addendum. But how do you, so now my repair request is basically not going to get, it looks like they're not doing anything. So is there, how do you, and they don't like personal property in the contract. How do I make sure?
They don't mind as long as it's said that it's for no additional consideration.
Okay.
And why we changed the form to say.
Yeah, and our purchase and sales agreement does say that. So if you want to do it as an addendum, you can just mirror the language in that section that says, and for no additional consideration, they agree to convey the John Deere lawnmower and the pool table.
Gotcha.
But don't say in consideration or
because of the hole in the roof.
Because of the hole in the roof, they're giving me this. Don't do that.
So take it off of the repair request and just put it on an addendum.
But could you use the change of purchase and sale agreement addendum and put it in other conditions?
Yes. I mean, basically what you need to do is you need to separate anything to do with value or money from anything to do with condition.
Okay.
Yeah,
because the lender doesn't want to find out that their house sucks.
So Bonnie, to your point, Section 10 of the P&S, last sentence, the following personal property is conveyed with no value assigned to the purchase price or consideration paid by the buyer. That sentence.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Well, we got a good chat today, and I want to thank you everybody for attending. I think it's my last brokers forum for the year. Terrible.
Can't we squeak one more out of you?
We can if we can.
If there's a topic that's of interest, we can try to get one more in. But thank you very much to John and Andrew for making.
Yeah, fantastic having those two here. You guys are fabulous.
If we squeeze
Thank
one
you.
in, John's going to have to wear a Christmas outfit, and we might all have to be in holiday garb for that call, since we're not having that benefit raffle.
Oh, there's no benefit raffle this year? That's
No.
right. Oh my God.
No.
Holy crap.
So
Dennis
that's
Palmer,
why.
Dennis Palmer finally got his wish.
So we might have to just do one more, and I'm going to say that we're going to have to plug the We Care Club. We definitely have charities out there that need our help.
Yeah, maybe this last one will cost $100 to get in.
It could be.
A bad idea.
That is a good
I'll definitely credit my fee. I'll definitely credit my entire fee.
I'll waive my fee for the year.
How many more years do we have left on this contract?
For no additional.
A lot.
We're on a month-to-month basis now.
Is that what it said?
To get out of that job before, John, and I think you were a little pouty about it.
Dennis?
No, both of you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
And I believe you both tried to get out of that job a couple years ago.
No, I never, ever wanted to be out of the job. I was fired for a year or two.
Ooh.
But I never did. Dennis every year, well, let's be honest, okay? And I'd say this to his face, so I'll say it to you guys. Dennis is a little girl. He wanted out. He wants people to say, no, Dennis, please come back, Dennis.
Jesus.
All right.
Well, thank you, everybody. I want to thank everybody for being on the call today. Hopefully we all took some information, and I now do remember it's the ladder of the contract, the closing, for the 7-year retention.
Release of your deposit.
Release of the that's the one that tricks everybody up, right?
Yep.
Is the release of the deposit.
Yeah.
Just think, end of the deal. Because the deal's not over if you still have the deposit money in your account.
Got it. Thank you, everybody.
Please stay safe out there. Continue to wear your masks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.